Love isn't always perfect, but sometimes it arrives in nerd glasses and mismatched socks. Zian Lu was 31 years old, breathtakingly handsome, fabulously wealthy, and completely single. Not because he lacked admirers, oh no. If admiration could buy happiness, he'd be drowning in it. But Zian had standards. Steel-high standards. A man didn't survive a brutal childhood, climb from rock bottom, and build an empire just to be someone's wallet and eye candy. He had watched his mother cry in silence while his father gambled their lives away. He had seen his little sister trade lunch for pencils, and his younger brother skip school just to find work. So he made a vow at 16. I will build a fortress so strong, my future wife and kids will never know what suffering tastes like. Now the fortress stood tall. CEO of Lutech Dynamics. His name printed on Forbes covers, whispered in boardrooms, and screamed by tabloids. But every woman he met was the same. Zian, your watch is gorgeous. Zian, I can't believe you're single. Zian, I love your Bugatti. Zian. No one asked, what's your favorite memory of your mom? Or, are you happy? Until her. Louis Ife. Ife wasn't looking for love. She wasn't even looking for a boyfriend. All she wanted was to finish her degree, earn her scholarship, and get her PhD. She had a secret crush on astrophysics, not a man. But her friends had other plans. Ife, you're 25 and single. Everyone else is either dating or engaged. You're going on this blind date or we're deleting your Netflix account. And that's how Lou Ife ended up in front of her mirror, grinning mischievously like a little fox. If I must go, she said, applying the world's most ridiculous mole to her cheek, then I'll go as the ugliest nerd the world has ever seen. She blew out her thick hair like a lion's mane, wore her old middle school glasses with one bent arm, chose a polka-dotted blouse with cartoon socks and mismatched shoes. Then she smiled proudly at her creation. Perfect. I dumped me too. The Blind Date Cafe, 7:05 p.m. Zian sat at the window seat, checking his watch for the 5th time. 7:05 p.m. She's late, his assistant muttered. Let's go, sir. You don't need this. You have a call with the Tokyo team at... No, Zian said softly. I prayed, and I'm staying. He had promised himself. This one, I won't judge by appearance. I'll stay and listen. And then the door opened. Heads turned. People gasped. Someone dropped their coffee. And in walked a walking fashion disaster. Lou Ife in full ugly disguise. Her glasses slightly fogged. Socks loud enough to start a party. Hair as puffy as a wool sweater. Zian almost smiled. He recognized her instantly. Her eyes hadn't changed. Ife Lu, the junior who used to stay back after school, solving physics problems instead of chasing boys. She never looked up when people mocked her. She just kept reading, determined and silent. She had grown up beautifully. But today, she looked like she had been hit by a wardrobe tornado. Still, Zian stood up, smiling gently. You're late, he said softly. Ife blinked behind her fogged glasses, startled. He didn't run away. Yes, sorry. I was at a costume party. He chuckled. I can tell. Ife cleared her throat and launched her plan. She talked with her mouth full, slurped her drink, told him about her imaginary pet iguana, said she believed the moon was made of cheese. Tried every trick to scare him off. But Zian didn't flinch. He just watched, quiet, calm, almost amused. Finally, he said, You always were dedicated to your studies. Still are, I assume. Ife's jaw dropped. Wait. You know me? I'm Zian Lu. You were 2 grades below me in high school. I used to see you studying behind the science block. Her face turned red even under the fake mole. You remember that? I remember everything, he said softly. And I know you're pretending. She froze. I came here hoping for a real connection, he continued. You came hoping to scare me away. He leaned in, eyes warm. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm not leaving. And just like that, Zian, the cold CEO who had turned down 100 blind dates, gently asked, Can I have your number? She swallowed. Her fingers trembled. He stood and opened the door for her. Come on. I'll drop you at your dorm. Let's not ruin the night. And so, the most unexpected love story began. Between a nerd in disguise and a billionaire with a soft heart, something beautiful had just sparked. But this was only the beginning. The cafe parking lot. 8:42 p.m. Zian opened the car door like a gentleman, gesturing with a smile. Ife stared at the sleek black Mercedes-Benz Maybach like it had just grown wings. No need. I can walk, she said, clutching her backpack like a life jacket. In those 2 left feet? He asked, nodding at her mismatched sneakers. Ife looked down and sighed. Right. Left foot. Red Converse. Right foot. Fuzzy panda slipper. Perfectly tragic. Fine, she muttered, climbing in with a dramatic flop. But if I get kidnapped, I'll haunt your dreams. He laughed softly as he closed the door. Inside the car, silence filled the space as they drove through the glowing streets of Beijing. City lights shimmered outside, but inside the car, tension danced with curiosity. Zian adjusted the radio to soft jazz, then turned to her. You were trying to ruin the date, he said plainly. No, I was just being authentically chaotic. He grinned. The mole on your cheek is slightly crooked. She yanked it off instantly and sighed. Okay, fine. My friends forced me to come. I wasn't in the mood to impress anyone. I noticed, he said, amused. Ife glanced at him, trying to find the same cold, arrogant air people whispered about. But there was none. He was calm, warm, mysterious, and maddeningly attractive even under the soft car lights. So why didn't you leave? She finally asked. Most men would have sprinted out the second I slurped that mango smoothie like a dying vacuum cleaner. He gave her a side glance. Because you reminded me that connection is deeper than packaging. Ife blinked. Okay. Philosopher CEO. He smirked. I prayed for someone genuine. Not perfect. Not polished. Just real. And then you walked in, wearing socks with cats doing yoga poses. She turned beet red. You noticed that? Hard to miss, he said, chuckling. Also, you still study like the world depends on it? Always, she said proudly. Books never disappoint. Well, he said, pulling up in front of her dormitory. Let me change that. Ife turned to him, eyebrows lifted. What? I want to see you again. No fake mole, no panda slippers. Just you. I don't date, she said automatically. I don't do second dates, he countered. But I'm making an exception. A pause. Then, he handed her his phone. Type your number, or I'll ask your dean. She narrowed her eyes at him, then smiled reluctantly as she typed it in. You're persistent. I'm patient, he corrected. There's a difference. He stepped out, walked around, and opened her door again. As she stepped out, her nerd glasses slid halfway down her nose. He pushed them up gently with one finger. I look forward to meeting the real Ife. And just like that, he was gone. That night in Ife's dorm, her roommate screamed when she walked in. Tell us everything. Was he ugly? Did you run him off with the mole? Ife collapsed onto her bed, staring at the ceiling, stunned. He saw through it all, she whispered. One roommate gasped. Wait, did he reject you? No, Ife said, slowly smiling. He asked for my number. Meanwhile, Zian's penthouse. His assistant stood in the hallway, baffled. You actually stayed the whole date, sir? Zian unbuttoned his cuffs and smiled to himself. She's the first one who didn't care who I was. The assistant looked confused. But sir, she wore socks with dancing cats. Zian's smile grew. And that's exactly why she might be the one. Something unusual had begun. He was cold, calculated, and always in control. She was messy, nerdy, and allergic to romance. But fate had other plans, and a second date was already on the horizon. The sun had barely begun its lazy dip over Beijing when chaos erupted on the third floor of room C14. Oh my God, Ife, you gotta see this. Susan, her overexcited roommate and part-time drama queen, had just burst through the door holding something big, bold, and very expensive. Trailing behind her were at least 5 other girls from the dorm, their eyes wide and mouths already forming words like, "Is that a luxury box? Wait, is that a Chanel ribbon? Who is she dating?" Susan practically launched the box onto Ife's bed and held up a second item like a trophy. A bouquet of deep red roses, wrapped in black satin and gold-trimmed paper. Everyone squealed. Everyone except Ife. She was sitting cross-legged on her floor pillow, glasses sliding down her nose, surrounded by scribbled notes, a physics textbook the size of a microwave, and 3 pens, 2 out of ink. Her eyes were narrowed, focused on a stubborn equation that refused to make any sense. "Ife," Susan whined. "Hello. The man sent you flowers that cost more than my entire tuition, and you're over there trying to romance Newton's laws." Ife didn't even look up. "The rose of this problem isn't blooming either. Something's off in step 4. Maybe I missed a coefficient." Susan stared at her like she had just confessed to liking plain rice over hot pot. "That's it. You've officially lost your romantic rights." She motioned to the other girls. "Ladies, Operation Wake the Nerd begins now." 2 minutes later, Ife found herself pinned to the floor, arms behind her back, squealing. "Susan, stop it. I haven't finished my notes." "You can write your notes when you're married to Gu Zian, and your problems are solved by hiring 5 PhD holders," Susan teased. "Wait, Gu Zian? The Gu Zian?" gasped one hostile girl. "CEO of Lutech?" "Yup," Susan smirked. And she tried to scare him off on a blind date by dressing like a walking meme. But now he's sending her couture and floral threats of romance. The girls erupted in gasps and giggles. Meanwhile, Ife was being force-fitted into a stunning black dress that shimmered like moonlight. It hugged the waist just right, with an off-shoulder neckline that practically whispered, "Expensive." Susan stood back, holding up her phone like a camera director. "Okay, turn. No, twirl. I hate you. Pose or I post your high school yearbook photo." Ife groaned but gave in, twirling half-heartedly. All the girls melted. "You look like you belong in a drama." "Forget drama. She is the drama now. Send me this look when you get rich and famous." Ife finally yanked off the dress and flopped back on her pillow like a felled tree. Later that night, 10:47 p.m. Just as the room quieted and her mind returned to those stubborn physics problems, her phone buzzed. "See you tomorrow, nerdy. Don't be late." She read the message once, then again, then stared at it like it had personally offended her. No emojis, no heart, just a straight, confident, teasing line. She rolled her eyes, tossed the phone onto the bed, whispered a short prayer under her breath. "God, please don't let me fall for this man. I'm trying to focus on planetary motion, not emotional motion." Then, as if her body heard her before her heart did, she curled up and dozed off, exhausted, overwhelmed, but with a strange flutter in her chest that no equation could explain. Tomorrow the nerd meets the CEO again. He sent roses. She sent resistance. But destiny? Destiny had already RSVP'd. Saturday evening, 6:45 p.m. The dorm hallway was unusually quiet. It was as if the universe knew something major was about to happen. Lu Yifei stood in front of the mirror in their shared bathroom, fully dressed in the elegant black gown Zian had sent. Her thick hair had been brushed out and pinned in a soft bun with loose strands framing her face. She didn't even recognize herself. "I look like a woman who's about to knock a billionaire off his feet," Susan finished, adjusting Ife's necklace and stepping back with pride. Ife, now fully present, blinked at her reflection. "I still don't know why he's doing all this." Susan rolled her eyes. "Because he's in the early stages of obsession, duh." A horn honked outside the dorm. A sleek black Rolls-Royce waited at the gate. Ife gulped. Downtown Beijing, private rooftop garden, 7:30 p.m. The car pulled into an exclusive restaurant on a rooftop overlooking the glowing city skyline. There was no crowd, no reporters, just a waiter who bowed politely and led her up a candle-lit staircase. Ife reached the top and paused. Zian was standing under a canopy of fairy lights, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. No tie, shirt slightly unbuttoned at the top. He wasn't trying to impress. He was impressive. But when he turned and saw her, his breath hitched slightly. "You came." "I almost didn't," she replied honestly. "I had 3 problems due today. You just barely outranked my deadline." He smirked. "I'll take that as a win." They sat across from each other at a table set for 2, a soft violin playing in the background. A small team brought in beautifully plated appetizers, followed by sparkling grape juice in crystal glasses. "So," she began, "what exactly are we doing here?" He leaned forward slightly. "Getting to know each other." Without a glued-on mole this time. Ife let out a half-snort laugh and covered her face. "I can't believe I did that." "I can. It means you don't care about pretending. That's rare." There was a brief pause. Not awkward, just loaded. Then she asked what had been clawing at her since their last meeting. "Why me, Zian? You're you. And I'm just a university student who almost wore mismatched earrings tonight." He took a sip of his drink, then looked straight into her eyes. "You're the first woman who didn't try to impress me," he said quietly. "You didn't ask what car I drive. You didn't talk about my company. You didn't pretend to be perfect. You were actually trying to scare me away." She blinked. "So you liked that?" "I respected it," he replied. "And I like you." Her heart did a weird little hop in her chest. They strolled along the edge of the rooftop. The air was crisp, the lights below twinkling like a million secrets. Ife wasn't sure how to act, so she didn't. "I'm not really the romantic rooftop dinner type, you know," she mumbled. "Good," Zian replied, "because I hate pretense. Next time we can eat noodles in the car." She glanced at him, surprised. "You eat noodles?" "I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I had to fight for everything. Noodles were luxury back then." Her expression softened. The polished CEO had cracks in his armor. Real cracks. Familiar ones. "I used to skip lunch to buy textbooks," she admitted. "Same," he said. "Only I skipped school to sell candy." Their eyes met. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire, but the boy who became him. And he saw not the pretty girl in a black dress, but the woman who never stopped chasing dreams. 9:12 p.m. goodbye, but not really. He dropped her off again, this time not at the front gate, but directly in front of the dorm steps. She opened the car door. "Thank you," she said softly, "for dinner. And the dress. Don't thank me yet. This was just date 2. You haven't seen my instant noodles game." She laughed. Then, just as she was about to step out, he leaned toward her, but stopped midway. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and whispered, "Good night, my nerd," then sat back, letting her go. Back on her bed, in her regular pajamas and fuzzy socks, she stared at her phone. No texts from him, just peace. She whispered a prayer again, this time softer. "God, if he's real, let him stay this way." Then pulled her blanket up, heart calm but fluttering just enough to keep her wondering. Over the past few days, Zian had been quietly persistent, messaging Ife with simple, thoughtful check-ins. "How's my favorite nerd? Survived the lectures today. Don't forget to eat something real. Noodles don't count 24/7. If you ever need a break, you know where to find me." Ife never knew how to reply fully, but the messages made her heart flutter in a way no textbook ever could. Ife was a walking balancing act. One hand held an open physics textbook, while her mouth held tight a sticky rice bun she was trying not to drop. In the other hand, a nearly empty juice bottle swung like a pendulum. Her oversized tote bag was loaded like a mule, dragging on one shoulder and pulling her down a little. Her eyes stayed glued to the textbook pages, barely looking where she was going. Thud! She bumped hard into something solid. Her head snapped up and there he was, Zian, standing tall with that familiar calm smile. He bent down slightly and tapped her nose gently. "How's my nerdy doing?" he teased. Ife blinked, flushed, and scrunched her face in embarrassment. "Ugh. Stop. That's so cringe." Zian laughed softly, then surprised her by reaching out and grabbing her heavy tote bag. "Whoa, you're carrying the entire library." He flexed his arm playfully, pretending the bag weighed him down like a sack of bricks. Ife giggled, the tension easing out of her shoulders. Zian then signaled subtly to his assistant, who had just pulled up in the sleek black car. The assistant quickly took the bag and disappeared towards the vehicle. Zian reached for the sticky rice bun and juice bottle, gently taking them from her hands. "You've definitely not had a proper meal today," he said with mock sternness. Ife opened her mouth to protest but closed it when he simply smiled. "Come on," he said. "Hop in." She climbed into the passenger seat, adjusting her glasses. As he started the engine and pulled onto the road, Ife flipped through her textbook with one leg casually curled up on the seat, a pen tucked behind her ear. After some quiet conversation and light banter, the car slowed and stopped by a beautiful riverside overlook. The sky was painted with shades of pink, orange, and lavender, a perfect sunset in the heart of Beijing. From the back seat, Zian pulled out 2 plastic bags. Ife's brow furrowed in confusion. He reached over and gently took her textbook, carefully removing the pen from behind her ear. Then he brought out 2 steaming cartons of noodles. "See? Told you I eat noodles too," he said, handing her the ginger-flavored carton. She smiled, a little surprised and delighted. Zian bowed his head and softly said a blessing before eating from his carton. Without warning, Ife plunged her chopsticks into his noodles, plucked one out, and popped it into her mouth. He looked up in surprise, then chuckled. "Sharing is caring," she said, reaching into his carton for the pepper-flavored noodles. They exchanged cartons playfully. They sat side by side in the car, enjoying the peaceful sunset as the city buzzed softly below. To Zian's surprise, Ife talked more than usual. Stories about her classes, her dreams, and even silly anecdotes about dorm life. He listened intently, matching her energy with gentle questions and laughter. For once, the weight of his empire felt light, replaced by the simple joy of sharing noodles and stories. Later, he drove her back to her dorm. As Ife stepped out, juggling an extra plastic bag with peppered soup, her heavy tote, and a half-open textbook, Zian watched quietly from the car. She turned and gave him a soft smile. "I'll see you tomorrow," she said, her voice tired but warm. He nodded, the smile lingering as he watched her enter the hostel building, carrying the weight of books and dreams, but somehow looking a little lighter than before. It had become a quiet mystery even to himself. Lately, Zian caught himself smiling for no reason. Sometimes in meetings, sometimes scrolling through his phone, sometimes staring out of his penthouse window at the sprawling city below. A text from Ife popped up. "Physics is officially my nemesis." He smiled again. 2 days later, after Ife's afternoon class, Zian was already waiting in the sleek black car. As she stepped out, juggling her books and a tired smile, he opened the door for her without a word. She climbed in with a mix of surprise and a growing comfort that was no longer awkward. The car smoothly made its way through Beijing's bustling streets, the city noise dimming with every mile. Ife sat with her textbook open, one leg curled up on the seat, pen tucked behind her ear. A familiar sight now. Zian glanced over, catching her flipping through pages with furrowed brows. "You look like you're trying to unlock the secrets of the universe," he said quietly. "More like trying not to fail my next exam," she replied with a small laugh. At the river's edge, the car's trunk popped open like a small stage for their regular ritual. Inside were 2 cups of bubble milk tea, a box of golden crispy potato fries, and a few sizzling meat skewers still warm from the grill. They settled comfortably on the open trunk, legs dangling over the edge, city skyline shimmering behind them. Ife pointed at a tricky math problem in her book, frustration softening her voice. "I just can't figure this out." Zian leaned in, reading the notes, and gently walked her through each step. His voice was calm and patient, his fingers occasionally tracing the textbook's pages. Every time she caught his gaze, her heart did a tiny flip. Between bites of fries and sips of milk tea, they laughed softly about her nemesis physics and his instant noodle philosophy. After finishing the snacks, they sat side by side in comfortable silence, watching the sun slowly dip below the horizon. For once, the CEO and the university student weren't defined by titles, wealth, or pretense. They were just two people sharing a simple, perfect moment. Zian found himself wondering if he could keep smiling like this forever. As the car pulled back onto campus, Zian looked over at Ife, whose eyes were heavy but bright. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked softly. She nodded, a sleepy smile tugging at her lips. "Same time tomorrow," she agreed. And as she stepped out of the car, he watched her disappear into the dorm building, already counting down the hours until next time. After celebrating his birthday earlier with his family, a quiet, elegant affair filled with laughter, traditional dishes, and a few nostalgic stories, Zian slipped away early. He had made time for one more celebration, the one that mattered most. The sleek elevator doors opened, and before him stood Ife. She was clutching a small navy blue gift bag, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with a mix of nerves and excitement. As Zian opened the door wider, she made a soft, exaggerated sound, half cringe, half delight. She sniffed the air. "Wow," she said. "Your penthouse smells nice. I didn't expect that." Zian chuckled. "You think I just live in a room full of contracts and stock certificates?" She rolled her eyes playfully. They wandered through the elegant penthouse together, Ife's eyes catching on the modern art pieces, the carefully curated wall paintings, and a few framed family photos that showed a softer, more personal side of the elusive CEO. She smiled at the image of a younger Zian with his parents, and one of him holding a little girl who must have been his niece. "You really kept these, huh?" she said softly. "Family's everything," he replied. Back in the dining area, Zian began setting the table for two. Ife stood before him and handed over the small bag she'd been holding. "Happy birthday," she said with a shy smile. He pulled out a navy blue tie and matching socks. He burst out laughing, a deep, genuine laugh. "Stop it," Ife teased, giving his shoulders a light, playful shake. "I didn't know what else to get. I figured, hey, a CEO always needs more ties, right?" Zian shook his head, still smiling. "You're impossible." But really, he appreciated the thought, the simplicity, the sweetness. He nodded, folding the tie and socks carefully. "This means a lot," he said quietly. Later, after dinner and quiet conversation, Ife glanced at the clock. "I have an early class tomorrow," she said. Zian's smile faltered a little, but he nodded. "Let me drop you back," he offered hesitantly. She agreed, and soon they were back in the car, the city lights blurring past. As he watched her walk toward the dorm entrance, bag in hand, tired but glowing, he realized he didn't want the night to end. But for now, a gentle goodnight would have to do. Final exam season. Finals were creeping in like quiet thunder. Heavy, constant, and impossible to ignore. Ife was in full academic mode. Her notes multiplied like rabbits. Highlighters lost their caps to exhaustion, and her glasses rarely left her face. Zian noticed the change, and instead of pulling her away, he leaned into her rhythm. With quiet gestures, subtle support, and an unspoken promise that he was there. Some days, after lectures, he'd wait near her department just to take her home. His home for quiet study evenings. Not dates. Not romantic setups. Just soft, stress-free space to breathe and focus. Ife always made it clear. She never stayed overnight. Not once. To her, they were still just cool friends, close, yes. Safe, definitely. But she had her own line, and Zian never pushed past it. Respect ran deep between them. She always studied on the floor of his living room, nestled against one of his huge, fluffy floor pillows. Textbooks open like battle plans, posture straight, eyes laser-sharp. Sometimes Zian would disappear into the kitchen, and minutes later return with a steaming bowl of hot peppered noodles, garnished with green onions and just the right amount of chili oil. He'd place it beside her without saying much, sitting a little distance away, not too close, never making her uncomfortable. "You cook too well for someone who wears 10,000 yuan suits," she'd tease as she slurped the noodles. Zian would smile. "Don't let the stockholders hear that." She'd flash him a tired grin, then jab her chopsticks in his direction. "But there's no way you cook better than I do. You've never even tried my hot pot." "Oh," he'd raise a brow. Challenge accepted. He'd ruffle her hair softly, like she was a favorite page in his favorite book, and then quietly go back to sipping his tea, letting her focus, letting her breathe. On the nights she stayed in her hostel, Zian would call, never too long, never too much. Just enough. A check-in. A calm voice. A shared silence as she studied under her desk lamp. Sometimes they didn't even talk. Just stayed on video call as she wrote notes and he typed on his laptop. And sometimes, when it got too late, she'd fall asleep mid-sentence, her screen showing only a sleepy Ife curled on her pillow, glasses slipping off her face. Zian never hung up right away. He'd just watch for a while, smiling faintly, before whispering, "Good night, nerdy." Then he'd end the call and set his phone down, heart just a little fuller. He'd never met anyone like her. Someone who didn't beg for attention. Someone who didn't try to win him over with flattery or forced charm. She was too busy building her future, too focused on her purpose. And he loved that about her. Even though she thought they were just cool friends, Zian already knew. Somewhere between the noodles, the quiet nights, and her sleepy video calls, his heart had already picked a side. Weeks before the final exam, Ife's life became a blend of equations, deadlines, and sticky notes. Campus cafes, hallway benches, and even the library stairs turned into her study zones. Zian, surprisingly consistent, never wavered. Whether it was bringing her food, driving her to class when she overslept, or just sitting silently nearby while she crammed, he was there. He never crossed any lines, never made her feel like she owed him her time. But he was hoping for it. They were closer than ever, and yet still dancing around a fragile line, somewhere between just friends and don't say it or it might become real. One night, she asked, "What's your biggest regret?" They were eating takeout in his living room. Floor pillows again. Milk tea again. Rain ticking softly on the windows. Zian paused, eyes unreadable for a second. Then he said, "I think," not realizing sooner that some people are worth slowing down for. Ife blinked. "Is that regret or wisdom?" "Bit of both," he replied. She didn't press. He didn't explain. But for the first time, she felt the weight behind his charm. The softness behind the power. And maybe, just maybe, a little longing in the way he looked at her. The exam hall buzzed with tension. Students crammed last-minute notes, professors shuffled papers, and Ife, exhausted but laser-focused, sat calmly, her lucky pen ready. 3 hours later, she stepped out of the building, letting the sun hit her face like a warm exhale. She stretched her arms like a person waking from a long, dreamless sleep. "Done," she whispered. Finally, a familiar voice muttered nearby. She turned, instinctively squinting at the tall figure leaning against a campus tree, wearing a baseball cap pulled low and a black face mask covering half his face. She blinked. "Are you a celebrity now? What is this, face incognito edition?" she teased, walking over and nudging his arm. Zian tugged the mask down just enough to flash a smile. Just didn't want to steal the spotlight from the girl who crushed her finals. She rolled her eyes. "Stop flattering me. I'm still recovering." He gently bumped her shoulder with his. "Congratulations, nerdy. You did it." She grinned, glowing, a bit breathless from the adrenaline and relief. "Want to celebrate?" he asked. "You bet." He paused. "Maybe I could finally taste those hyped-up noodles you keep bragging about." She narrowed her eyes, mock offended. "Hyped up? I'll have you know my noodle game is award-winning in 2 provinces. "Aha," he smirked. "Let's see if it's SEAL level approved." Later that evening, she stood in her tiny dorm kitchen, apron tied, hair in a messy bun, noodles sizzling as spicy sauce bubbled in the pan. Zian sat on a stool by the window watching her, not like a guest, not like a CEO, but like a man who genuinely didn't want to be anywhere else. And in that quiet space between exams and future plans, between takeout nights and peppered noodles, something clicked. A feeling that something real was already there, and maybe had been for a while now. Yifei had talked a big game. From the moment Zian teased her about her award-winning noodles, she knew she had to impress. She didn't just want to make a bowl of noodles. She wanted to make him remember it. She made a small portion, just enough for two. She boiled, stirred, spiced, and prayed. But somewhere between confidence and chaos, the flavor didn't come together. The sauce was bland, the texture was off, and something about it just wasn't right. The air in the dorm kitchen turned heavy with quiet disappointment. Yifei stared down at the steaming pan, shoulders sagging, lips tight. She'd expected at least something to work. Zian, still in the living room, was playfully calling out, "Is it done yet? I'm salivating here, you know?" Silence. Then longer silence. Finally, sensing something was off, he stood and walked to the small kitchen. She didn't turn when he entered. Just stood there, arms crossed, staring down at the noodles like it had betrayed her childhood. When he gently leaned against the wall beside her, she gave a small, half-hearted laugh and said, "I admit defeat." He tilted his head, catching the slight shimmer in her eyes. "What kind of girl doesn't know how to cook?" she asked, trying to sound playful. But her throat caught halfway through. Zian saw right through her. It wasn't about the food. It was about trying and failing at something she had really wanted to be good at. He nudged her gently with his elbow and gave a warm, easy smile. "Hey, everyone's not good at everything, and that's perfectly okay." Then, without waiting for a reply, he stepped forward, pulled off his blazer, rolled up his sleeves, tied on her spare apron, pink with strawberries on it, no less, washed his hands and set another pan on the stove. Yifei blinked. "What are you doing? Saving your noodle reputation." She tried to protest, but he was already slicing scallions and heating oil like a pro. He told her what to pass him, let her taste the broth as he adjusted the spice, and made her stir the noodles just right. All the while, he cracked jokes about his secret CEO chef training and how he once burned a whole pot of rice in boarding school. "You're not the only kitchen disappointment, you know," he grinned. Slowly, bit by bit, her laugh returned. She relaxed, and in that tiny kitchen, the two of them created something imperfect, but perfect enough. Later that evening, they sat on the living room floor pillows, two mismatched bowls in hand, chopsticks clicking softly, steam rising between them. The city buzzed outside, but inside, it was quiet, warm, safe. Zian glanced at her between bites and asked, "So, what do you want to do after graduation?" Yifei paused, her lips pressing together. "I'll probably further my studies," she said. He nodded. And... She hesitated, then exhaled. "I don't know." She looked down at her bowl. Then gently he reached out and took her hand. Just a light clutch, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Even I was scared once," he said quietly. "I asked myself too many times what the future held for me. I used to panic about the unknown. But then, I stopped. I leaned on God instead." He looked at her earnestly. "And God showed up. Again and again. Not always how I expected, but always when I needed it." Her eyes shimmered again, but this time not from defeat. "I know He has a beautiful plan for you too, Yifei. It might take time. It might even be slower than you like. But it'll be worth it." He squeezed her hand gently. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't use books and furthering your studies as an excuse to hide from your future." Yifei's throat tightened again. But this time, it wasn't because she felt small. It was because someone saw her, and still believed there was more. Much more. Graduation day, a day to remember. Yifei had officially conquered it. Her final exams were behind her, and the graduation gown draped across her body like a symbol of everything she'd fought for. Long nights, missed parties, endless textbooks, and one CEO who somehow made the process sweeter. She didn't expect him to show up. She figured maybe a congratulatory text, a call if she was lucky. CEOs don't just stroll into crowded university events. But there he was, standing by a nearby tree on the school lawn, baseball cap low, face mask on, hoodie zipped, doing his best to look like a normal guy. Did it work? Well, several students whispered, "He looks like Gu Zian." One even dared a photo from afar. But Zian ignored it all. He only had eyes for one person. After the official photos with her parents, cousins, and classmates, Yifei finally made her way toward him. She grinned as he handed her a small, sleek gift bag with a handwritten card tucked inside. Then she pulled out her phone and said, "Your disguise is cute, but let's get proof you were here." They took several selfies, side by side at arm's length. And then, without warning, Zian pulled the mask off and slipped off the cap. Just like that, the mysterious man was the billionaire CEO again. Yifei gasped. "Zian!" He smirked. "Too hot in that thing." They took ridiculous photos, her arms wrapped around his shoulders, trying to pull him down to her height, him resting his arm lazily across her head while she laughed uncontrollably. In one photo, she threw her head back, laughing so hard her cap nearly flew off. It wasn't just her graduation anymore. It was their moment, a blend of freedom, friendship, and something slowly becoming undeniable. After heartfelt goodbyes with her family and warm hugs from relatives, Zian leaned over and whispered, "Now the real celebration begins." And just like that, the evening unfolded like a storybook. They roamed the city, taking photos at parks, buying street ice cream, riding a carousel like overgrown kids, stopping at a small bookstore, where Yifei lost her mind over old literature, and posing next to weird sculptures downtown. By the time the sun dipped low, her phone gallery had over 900 new pictures. They ended the day at a boutique cinema tucked between old shops, cozy lighting, velvet seats, the smell of fresh popcorn filling the air. The movie started, a soft romantic comedy with lots of witty banter and heartwarming moments. But 15 minutes in, Yifei's head began to lean sideways, then down, then gently rested on his shoulder. Zian glanced down. She was out cold. He smiled to himself. Carefully, he slipped his hand behind her neck and adjusted her head, letting her sleep more comfortably on his shoulder. Then, like it was the most natural thing in the world, he bent his head and placed the gentlest kiss on her forehead. "Sleep well, nerdy," he whispered. While the rest of the cinema laughed at a scene on screen, Zian stayed quiet, still, and completely at peace. He didn't care that she missed half the movie, because that moment, right there, was the real ending he'd been waiting for. The sunlight spilled softly through the curtains of Zian's penthouse as Yifei slowly woke, still wrapped in the warm comfort of the blanket he had tucked around her after the cinema. She opened her eyes and saw him across the room, quietly sipping coffee, watching her with that rare, unguarded smile she'd grown to love. "Morning," she whispered, a little embarrassed. He just nodded, his smile widening. "Good morning, nerdy." The days after the graduation felt different. Zian's usual reserved demeanor softened further. He was more attentive, more patient. And Yifei found herself stealing glances, noticing the way his eyes lingered on her, or how he reached for her hand just a little longer than before. Neither said it, but both knew the line had blurred. One afternoon, while helping her review, Zian gently brushed a stray hair behind her ear. The simple touch sent a jolt through both of them. Yifei looked up, caught his gaze, and suddenly felt like she was standing on the edge of something new. Exciting, scary, and utterly inevitable. Neither spoke the words, but the question hung in the air. What happens now? Yifei wasn't ready to admit she wanted more than just friendship. Zian wasn't sure if she felt the same way. So, for now, they stayed in that quiet space, close but not quite crossing the threshold. One night, as they watched the city lights flicker below from the balcony, Zian finally broke the silence. "Whatever happens next, I want to figure it out with you." Yifei smiled softly. "Me too." They didn't need grand declarations. Not yet. Just a promise. To take the next step. Together. This time, It wasn't just noodles by the riverside or casual strolls around the city. Zian had planned something special. A private rooftop dinner, twinkling fairy lights, soft jazz music playing in the background, and a view of the entire city glowing beneath them. Ife arrived in a simple but elegant dress, feeling the weight of the moment press gently on her. They talked about dreams, fears, favorite childhood memories, and the little things that made them who they were. But through it all, Ife noticed the way Zian kept glancing at her. Not in the casual way friends look at each other, but with something deeper, something that made her heart flutter, yet her stomach twist. She wasn't sure what it was. Was it love, expectation, hope, or maybe something else entirely? Ife found herself growing uncomfortable. The glances felt intense, like a silent question being asked over and over without words. She wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever it was Zian was feeling. So, she smiled softly and tried to steer the conversation away from the weight of unspoken feelings. Zian noticed. He pulled back, giving her space even as his eyes betrayed how much he wanted to reach out. He understood this wasn't a race. He was willing to wait. For her, the soft glow from the TV lit up the room. Ife sat cross-legged on the floor, a bowl of popcorn balanced on her lap, completely absorbed in the action movie playing on the screen. Zian sat close by, watching her instead of the film. Her focused eyes, the way she tossed popcorn into her mouth, the slight furrow on her brow during tense scenes. All of it made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't expected. He wanted to reach out, hold her hand, but he hesitated. Was this too soon? Was she ready for something real? Closing his eyes briefly, he silently prayed for an unusual kind of grace, the kind that would let him not mess this up. He called her name softly. No response. Just the rustle of popcorn and her eyes glued to the screen. He tried again, a little louder this time. She replied, still not looking. His heart pounded harder. Then, slowly, he reached for the remote and turned off the TV. Ife blinked in surprise and nudged him lightly. Why'd you turn it off? Zian said nothing. His gaze held hers, deep and steady. She reached toward the remote, but he gently caught her hand. His voice was low, trembling just enough to betray how much he felt. Marry me. His heart hammered so loudly it felt like the whole room might hear it. Ife froze. Seconds stretched into a minute. Suddenly, a popcorn piece caught in her throat, and she started to cough. Zian immediately patted her back, his hand firm but gentle, never letting go. Still kneeling on the floor beside her, Ife leaned back against the couch, breathless. He looked at her, his voice steady but soft, carrying all the hope and fear he held inside. Marry me, please. Her mind raced, her heart raced even faster. Her cheeks burned with heat. She couldn't find her voice, couldn't look at him. Not yet. He noticed and gently cupped her face in his hands, tilting her chin up until her eyes met his. Please, marry me, Ife. Ife sat frozen, her mind racing, her heart pounding so loud she was sure Zian could hear it. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. I, she stammered, eyes wide and searching. Her voice barely a whisper. She finally said, I need time, Zian. I don't want to mess things up. Before she could say more, Zian gently cut in, his tone steady but tender. I'll wait. He reached for her hands, squeezing them gently. I'll wait until you reply me. His eyes never left hers, filled with an earnestness that made her heart ache. But please don't say no. He paused, then added quietly, I promise to wait. Slowly, he reached for the remote and turned the TV back on. The glow of the screen filled the room again, but something had shifted. Zian settled down beside her, his head resting softly on her shoulder, his hands still holding hers. Ife leaned into him, unsure of what the future held, but feeling the warmth of this moment, of his patience, his hope, and his unwavering faith in her. Neither spoke for a while. Zian wasn't sure what storm was passing through her mind, but he hoped, he prayed, it wouldn't be a no. In the quiet, All that mattered was this: two hearts intertwined, waiting to write the next chapter. Please do us a favor. Subscribe our channel. Let's keep writing more amazing, unusual love stories. May God bless you heart richly in Jesus' name. Amen. See you again.